I was thinking the last time I did a presentation here was 1992. And the first one was 87, and I got up on the stage saying, I'm the smartest guy in the room. I had all the confidence in the world. Same thing in 92. I did it with Chuck, John Rhodes, Hank Haney, and Mike Adams. And now I'm a lot more humble 40 years later. So, and I'm not a professional presentator. I came up with these notes from people that ask me questions all the time, golf professionals and or students. So that's where I came up with some of my notes here, and I'm going to read off my page a lot of times here. The first thing I'd recommend is that you listen to, you seek out some older teachers in your area. If you're in the, I think a lot of you are from Houston area. I mean, I'd seek out Jim Murphy, David Lundstrom. Jim and I keep in touch quite a bit, and I mean, he's had lunch with Ben Hogan. He has a student that's had 50 lessons from Ben Hogan. So I asked Jim the other day, because I got pictures of Ben Hogan like this, and I got pictures of him like this before the accident. And so he asked Tom Byram, this was a while ago, I said, which leg was injured in Hogan's accident? He says, the left leg gets shorter. And that's probably why he's like that, where we see that compared to before the accident. Those of you, I'm glad I see some people here with gray hair, because some of you would know Calvin Pete was a great ball striker in the 80s, and we know his left arm was shorter, so that's why he might tilt a little bit. David Lundstrom played the tour. I think a lot of you know that, the senior tour, and he was big friends with Larry Nelson, and Larry spent a lot of time with Hogan. And I remember one of his tips was Hogan said, if you want to avoid the hook, make sure your shoulders turn more level through the ball, not underneath. Just little things like that. Chuck had a picture up here a second ago with Sam Snead aimed right. One of my friends went with Harvey Pennick to the 1968 PGA at what's the name of that course in San Antonio? Pecan Valley. And they're watching Sam Snead aim left and hitting every ball straight. And he goes, he's admiring Sam Snead's swing. And he asks Harvey, he goes, he's hitting it straight, Harvey, but why is he aimed so far right? And he goes, pretty pearl of wisdom, he says here. He says, a lot of people with big shoulders, that's the only way they can stay behind it is aim right. I thought that was a pretty big pearl of wisdom he said right there. So I highly recommend listen to the older instructors that teach a lot. I would personally like to listen to Hal Underwood. He was a great player and I think a top college player. And Homero Blancas, some of you know, shot 55 and played on a Ryder Cup. So I'd like to listen to Heath Slocum, Boo Weekley, and who was it? And Bubba Watson all had the same high school coach, played high school golf together. Probably has some pretty good pearls of wisdom there. Myself personally, Pennick, Coach Hannon, Brent Buckman, Ben Crenshaw, Bill Rogers. I've actually, unfortunately, Jimmy Ballard right now is going through some stuff with dementia right now. And I criticized his book a little bit. I said, it was poorly demonstrated. He agreed. I said, you didn't talk the right connection with the right arm. He agreed. I'm ready for a battle. And he was agreeing with me. I said, I mean, you know, everybody's going like this, swinging. And so I had a real good conversation with him. And I think Jim McLean would kind of interpret his information the best. I started teaching in '79. I worked at a small club in St. Louis. I worked with David Ledbetter. Our school was called the Andy Bean Golf Studio. Actually, Chuck visited at one time. This was in the mid-'80s. I got to watch and teach a lot of tour players. And as a little kid, I'm an only child and had studied golf as a little kid. And I actually discovered something when I was like 14, 15 years old, and it's still kind of one of the premises I teach. They had Sam Snead's swing in Golf Digest, set up halfway back, top halfway down, impact halfway through, and then the finish. I connected all his joints with a ruler. here to here, here to here, here to here. On each segment, nothing changed. If this moved, this moved, this moved, this moved. Everything worked like an X, but the angles never changed. And the only teacher I know that emphasized that was Ken Venturi in his book, No Angles Should Be Changed from Address. My other premise, and when I teach, is I want everything similar to every other hitting and throwing sport. One of the, and I actually have a video of him, of a guy named Bill Melhorn, who Hogan said was the best ball striker at all time. And his premise was, if you can take a baseball and hit a ground ball to the first baseman, the second baseman, a baseball to the left fielder, he goes, you got a round ball and a round bat. He goes, this ball's sitting still, you got a flat-faced club, you should be more accurate with that. So it kind of made sense, and I actually got to play with him. He was 80 years old when I played with him, but the guy never missed a shot. It was pretty incredible. Let's see how this works here. This is the TrackMan in 1985. Some guys think I teach like a dinosaur, and I probably do. But this is the TrackMan. It was called the A-Star system. You had to stand on that platform. The negative is you had to stand on that platform. The positive is showed your weight distribution during the swing. I think there's a lot of different forms of the TrackMan, but this is what it looked like, and I might have another picture of it. This is that's probably 1985. That's Payne Stewart using it from the other side. I believe that's Grand Cypress. It cost $10,000 then, so it was a pretty expensive tool. This is kind of incredible. Can I do that? Is there any way I can do this slow motion? No? Well, I got to go backwards here. Sorry. This guy here, believe it or not, if we go slow motion, he blocks it more than anybody I've ever seen, and it hits duck hooks. That blade, I'm sorry I can't do it in slow motion, but his blade is so open through contact, it's a joke. And I'm sorry I can't do it in slow motion, but a point to be made that I want to make there, I remember doing this with Fred Funk. He was pulling the ball for like 3 years. And I keep telling him, I said, you're pulling it because you're blocking it. And if you think of the way a driver's designed, if we want to make a driver hook, where do we put the weight? We put it on the heel, right? And most people think if we put the weight on the heel's heavy, the toe's light, the club's going to close. It's just the opposite. If I got a rock on a string that's heavy and one light, and I'm swinging in a circle like this, what's going to lead, the heavy or the light? The heavy. So the more you're like this, and this guy is like, it's hard to believe this guy hits duck hooks, and if I have this all on my phone if you want to see it a little later. But a lot of times there are just so many little misconceptions with the club face and the ball. And I don't use the TrackMan. I think if you can hit between two tees, my eye can see that pretty good. Of course, I've been doing it for a few years. Another question I get a lot from other teachers, how do you become a top 100 teacher? How do you become a top 50 teacher? Pure luck. I would say if you're in this room, you've taught 15 to 25 years, you don't teach a method, you're teaching 15 to 20 students a year, you're a top 100 teacher. I mean, if you're studying the game, and I know all of you do that, I'd say you're a really good teacher. I mean, get lucky teaching a tour player. I mean, probably worked the most with Fred Funk, Tom Pertzer, J.L. Lewis, and Joe Ogilvy. And they just happened to live right by me. There was no trick to it. I mean, they just happened to be there. And I'm one of those teachers. I want to see a tour player 5 or 6 times a year. If I go to a tour event, at that time I called it advertising expense. I can't change anything. They're getting ready for battle, maybe just a little thing in their setup and stuff. But a lot of teachers ask me that. And I mean, you kiss the media's ass. It's the truth. You invite them to your place, you give them free lessons, you buy them dinner, and that's just the way you do it. But it's totally changed right now. But I wouldn't worry about that. Use yourself awareness of how good a teacher and try to improve every time with that. My other thought I have all the time is everything I tell somebody, I want it to work under pressure. And I think to myself, I'm making a lot of thought before I tell somebody something. I'm like, will this work under pressure? And is it too complex? I try to find the right words or visuals or feels to help a person do that, where it just stays very athletic. And then I'm also saying, if I change the grip, we'll use David Duval as an example. If he's got this duck hook grip and he's hitting slices, I'm not going to get his grip weaker. I got to wait till his ball flight changes a little bit. So you got to have a little feel with that. I was doing an outing outside of Augusta about 8 years ago, and it just happens to be, I'm from St. Louis originally, and Ozzie Smith was getting ready to play in his little Pro-Am, and I seen him on his backswing. He was a little like this, and then he's coming over the top. He looked like he was a good athlete, obviously. He was probably about a 12 handicap, and he asked for some help, and I just told him something simple. I said, just on the takeaway, just get the club doing this. I didn't tell him to open the club. I just guided it. And that's, my brain said, if I do that, he's going to turn his shoulders a little bit more level. And one of the things I always do, and I told him this, I said, on the downswing, start the ball right and hit a big hook. So I know if he starts it right and hits a big hook, he's got to turn back. If he starts it right, he's got to swing down from the inside. Because of that, he had to stay behind it. Now he says, oh crap, I'm going to hit it right. Now I got to hit a finish. And if you study, I wouldn't say 100% of the golfers, I would say 100% of the women golfers, I'm talking lady pros, and probably 95% of the tour players all groove their swing to a hook. And you say, how are you positive? That sounds silly. How do you know Scotty Scheffler grooved his swing to his hook? You can see it by his eyes. Rory's swing, you'll see him go like this every time. As kids, they worked on starting that ball right and drawing it. So that's a big thing for me. I mean, I don't mind. I love people that fade the ball. Doing outings with Hale Irwin or Corey Pavement, they both played fades, and they both told me they released the heck out of it to fade it, and they had a grip that they could not hit a hook. But I'm real big on if the guy's hitting big hooks, whatever I'm working on, I always say start it left and hit a fade. I think I'm not a big TrackMan guy at all, but I want to see the right shape of the shot all the time. So if a guy can't hook it, I'm going to tell him to pitch or hook. I don't even tell him how to hook it. I'll work on an area to allow him to do it. And the opposite, if he's hitting hooks, I'll tell him to hit fades. And there's a lot of fact and field. This is, a lot of you know who Mo Norman is. He says he never lets the heel pass the toe. He released the club like crazy. Anybody that stands that far away from the ball is got that when that club swings on this plane, that club's going to open and close. I mean, he can't help it. And I was with Mo probably, I'd say 60 times. The myth on how straight he hit it, it's no myth. He hit a crazy straight. If you said aim at this screen from 250 yards away, hit 100 balls, I'd say 70 would hit it, the other 30 right next to it. And using an odd, bad word, at that time he was called an idiot savant. I mean, it was... I remember him telling me, I was trying to play the mini tour then. He said, read this book. It was called Power of the Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. You could pick page 95. He could read it. He just had an incredible memory. But no BS how straight he hit it. He was actually the first guy that, sorry. Oh. He was the first guy to have one-length clubs. Some of you that are 60 plus years old, he had grips on his clubs about this long. And when he was hitting a 3-iron, he'd grip it down this far. So and his clubs were super heavy. And there was no BS how straight he hit it. He was kind of a showman, and he learned his golf from a guy named Paul Berthley. If any of you, some of you older instructors would know that. He taught with a pipe with isometric positions is basically how Mo learned. Once he came over to the States. One of the things Hogan says in his book, I think most of you've read Hogan's book, he says, try to control the club face is folly. It happens much too fast. Nobody can control such a devilish little thing. I don't want to think about something there. That's already got to be taken away halfway back or halfway through when you hit a shot. Claude Harmon, Butch Harmon's book on his dad, Claude Harmon, he says target-related players play good most of the time. Swing-related players play good when they're swinging well. Ball-oriented players have no chance. It's out of Claude Harmon's book about his dad, which I highly recommend. If you haven't read it, I think his dad wrote a great book on his dad. Koepka says the best TrackMan is your eyes. And I'm probably repeating a bunch of things Chuck said. If I'm changing somebody's grip or somebody halfway back, I'm always looking at the opposite side of the swing. Somebody, if I'm working on, just like we'll use Odyssey Smith, I'm trying to get his shoulders turning more level, not in front of the ball. If I have him feel this, I want him to have the correct downswing. So I'm always looking at the forward swing. The top players in the world that I've taught and or observed, there were more forward swing players. I rarely heard a tour player that was a high-level player thinking of backswing things when they were choking their guts out. And I don't know of any hitting or throwing sport you'd think of your backswing. So I'm a big forward swing thinker. Now I'm going to correct the backswing, but then I'm going to think of ball flight, and I want to get that finish pretty good. We're always attracted to like the outlier. Here's the one plane swing. Here's the stack and tilt. And you'll see a few pictures in a second of Hogan before the accident. He was like this. He moved his head maybe 5 or 6 inches behind the ball, and his right hip actually went this way. It didn't go like this. I'll show you that in a second. But we have, we'll use one plane as an example. Pardon me, who is the guy that started one plane? What was his name? Jim Hardy. So I remember in 1975 with an 8mm camera, I'm filming Jim Hardy giving Chris Blocker a golf lesson. That's it, and I had a coat on. It's 100 degrees in St. Louis at the St. Louis Open. I love studying that stuff. But Matt Kuchar's obviously noted for that. I am told Chris O'Connell's his instructor. Chris O'Connell said he got Matt Kuchar hitting the ball good in 30 swings. So Matt's always had the club, we know, behind him even before he changed it. He said he just matched it on the other side. And obviously Matt has an incredible career, tough competitor. But I don't see everybody doing that. Stack and tilt, I don't see that anymore, and there's probably some that are. I just don't see them. Maybe there are. We have our man Bryson DeChambeau now, who the only guy, and you guys might know it, but I don't. I've never seen a long hitter in my life with a weak grip except for him. Some of you might have seen, but we know how long he is. He's physically strong, but he's the only long hitter I've ever seen with a weak grip, and it actually matches what he does with his club. So you got to remember, when he's hitting an 8-iron in the rough, that 8-iron is a pitching wedge loft in 6-iron length. That's why he's so good out of the rough. And you got to be strong to do that. And again, if you see him hitting a 3-iron, remember that's a 6-iron, or let's say a 4-iron. It's a better example. 4-iron, that's a 3-iron loft, and it's 6-iron length. So the weak grip helps him hit the ball in the air. And also, that weak grip is incredible with pitch shots. At the PGA, the PGA where he almost went to Xander, he was 18 out of 20 getting it up and down. He's got an incredible, on the last 9 holes at the Open he won, he hit 3 greens. And maybe that long bunker, that incredible great shot in the last hole, maybe it helped having a sandwich. That was 6-iron length. Might have helped a little bit. But we always look at, I'm not as strong as Bryson, or I don't have that same mentality, so it might not fit me.
Right.
When I see a student, and again, Chuck probably said a lot of this stuff, I didn't hear all his presentation, I immediately start to evaluate him. I try to see their personality type, their learning style. I watch it real close how they walk and their build. So we all know Jordan Spieth goes through the ball like this, right? And I think he hurt his wrist, not by doing this, by changing his grip to a correct grip. Now, if you watch Jordan walk, he walks like a monkey. His hands are right like this when he walks. If you watch him walk. So that fits him. So how did he hurt his wrist getting a correct wrist? Well, when he has his grip like this, this is his old grip with his left hand here. He had some form where this elbow folded down somewhere. When he got his grip correct, he's going to hurt his wrist or his elbow going through the ball like that. That's it. I could be wrong, but that's just the thought. He didn't hurt his wrist the first 8 years he played good, and we all know he went through the ball. You'll watch guys like Ray Floyd or Max Homa. How do they walk? They're knees and feet people. I mean, I don't know, Ray Floyd, he always walked that way, and then you watch a guy like Dustin Johnson. So I'm going to watch a little bit their length of their stride. I'm going to watch if their feet are splayed. It's going to tell me a lot on their restrictions on why they can't turn or can't turn. Usually a long hitter. Most of your great players are very short legs, long torso, or long hitters, or small butt, big shoulders, small gear, big gears, why they naturally hit it so darn far. But I'm going to be real attentive to it. I'm going to look real close to their equipment. A lot of times you'll see beginner golfers or slicers wear the top of their grip out with their right thumb. I'm going to look at their shoes. A guy that hooks the ball or girl that you're going to see their toe of their right foot tore out. I'm going to see if their left foot's stretched a little bit too much because they're coming around and over the top. I'm going to look at everything I possibly can so I can say something very simple. I'm always looking at the best I can. I look at their personality types. I do have one witness here, Brian Minnick, worked with me since he was 16 years old and left when he was about 30. I don't know if that's exactly right, Brian. But we'd have funny names. We had 36 personality types. Is this Luscious Lily? Is this Backwoods Bird? Is this CEO Charlie? Is this Know-It-All Nick? Is this Jim the Jock? Is this Value Vic? So we had to adapt. Some of my instructors says, why are these people not listening to us? And I said, these people have been screwed by lawyers, bankers, doctors. They're going to take a little time to trust us. So take your time, show them what to do. They'll get trust. Backwoods Bert, he's used to dealing with friends. You got to be his friend first so you start helping him. I purposed Luscious Lily. She doesn't want to be embarrassed. Don't give her anything that's hard. And all the other ladies in that group, they're going to keep score on how much time you're spending with this lady. So I always try to balance out that. I let Brian work with her. But we had a lot of fun at the schools and a lot with the personality try to adapt to them the best we could. If it was a player that was an advanced player, if I could tell, I could say just get a low coil in the right leg. I mean, they know what they do. They can turn those words into that picture in their mind. If it was more of a novice player, I'd probably give them a practice drill or demonstrate with them. And if it's a total beginner, we just work on waist high, chest high, shoulder high. I remember I grew up with Jay Haas, and his uncle was Bob Golby, won the Masters. And Jay said all he did was work halfway back and halfway through. He never worked on anything up here happen. And I told that to Crenshaw, and he said, that's all I did. Harvey, if you ever read Ben's book, Feel for the Game, he said, at one point I almost fell out of my chair. He says, come to think of it, I don't think Harvey Pennick ever gave me a formal lesson. All he did was help me hit chip shots and put my hands on the club correctly. When I seen that, I couldn't believe I read that. So, I mean, a lot of times what we did at the schools is we made sure everybody was really good waist high back, and waist high through. If there's something up here to correct, typically we did it with a practice drill of some sort. Also, another thing we did a lot is, because this might help some of you that have the person that hits shanks. A lot of times, it's the only time I can't help a person hit shanks if their eyes are real bad. Sometimes I'll have a guy or girl that just got a contact, one for distance, one for reading. They don't see the ball, they're seeing beyond the ball. So I mean, it's a little tough for them to do that. And there's ways you can test. If those of you that want to know that, I'll tell you after this talk. But eyes are so important. Somebody with bifocals typically has poor posture because they're trying to see the ball some way, or they might be like this. It just depends. But I would take a good look at that with their glasses. I know every tour player I know that wore glasses had one lens. And if you need readers to see the scorecard or something, do that. One of the assistants at our club, Tom Kite, made a comment to him. He says, you know, if they had the same eye technique or eye technology now, he goes out and probably won 5 or 6 more tournaments. And I believe he might have won more than that, because it hurts so much with depth perception and putting and chipping. But the eyes mean a lot as far as how the person sees the golf ball and how they see their shot. I'll use, so I'm going to use, I already said 90+% of the golfers groove their swing to a hook. And I'm going to name some people here: Annika, Henrik Stenson, Hogan, Joe Durant, and Jimmy Walker. If you watch her carefully, you'll see their head and eyes go like this. And Butch worked on that with Jimmy Walker to get his head and eyes moving forward, because he was so far back here. Annika's teacher, believe it or not, some of you know this, some of you might know this, was basically taught by Jimmy Ballard. He went over there to Sweden and helped a lot with that. And I think Ballard's very good, but you need the correct interpretation of his information, because a lot of people say, well, it looks like Rocco's swing, and that's it. There's some Curtis Strange or Justin Leonard or Annika. I'm trying to think of some other swings that he had an influence on. I mean, they look just like normal, conventional swings. Some of you that are young, prior to 1982, if you used your right arm in the golf swing, you were an idiot. Everything was left arm. Don't use your right arm ever. And then Ballard had this thing out. According to Jim McLean, he taught a ton of tour players. And then we had Calvin Pete with a handicapped left arm, and Calvin Pete led the tour every year in greens and fairways for 10 years in the 80s. So prior to that, he had a big influence in golf, I thought. I'm not, and I'll go backwards. I just learned this from Brian Minnick. He said this: Ludwig Aberg learned a lot of golf, or practiced a lot of golf in a net. And I'm not, in the summertime, sometimes I teach at one of those rock golf places, a few of my customers. I'm not a big fan of teaching indoors at all, but Julie Inkster learned indoors from her teacher, was a guy named Leslie King. Corey Pavin and Amy Elcott both learned indoors from a teacher named Walter Keller. And I've talked to Corey on this a lot. Never worked on them outside. Some of you may know Ernest Jones taught inside. It's a little bit of a misnomer, but he taught inside in a studio apartment in New York. We know Manuel Della Torre, those of you might know him, teaches that system. But if you do a little bit more research, you'll know Ernest Jones had one leg. I mean, well, how else is he going to teach? I mean, so he's kind of limited on what he's going to do. But do a little research on that if you see some different oddity on that. I'm watching my time. So here's the thing. I'm glad none of you have raw eggs in front of me. So here's the thing I see a lot. Let's see if I have some more film to show this. So this is 1986. We had 3-dimensional filming where we put 6 sensors on the 6 main joints and drew a spine in. I love this quote here. This is out of Mike Hebron's book. I think it's a pretty good quote on the golf swing. This is Rory practice with his right arm. I don't have any pros practicing a lot with just their target arm.
The time was right. I don't think something got.
I don't know what I have next. This is Billy Horschel working on bending his left arm.
Obviously, stroke play is well around the world.
Kind of odd, isn't it?
In stroke play tournament, how much or how little are you watching?
So this is the thing I was telling you about Hogan. This is before his accident. You can see where his head is on that line. You can see this is before his accident. Let's see what I have next here. This is Wild Bill Melhorn that Hogan said was the greatest ball striker he's ever seen. You can see these on YouTube.
It's been quite a tee shot.
Melhorn was real big on keeping the left arm close to the body and have a lot of stress on the shaft with the right hand. He would say, and Venturi says this in his book, like this right hand's a paintbrush. I never want the paint to come out. And he'd keep this left arm. He'd have one force going like this and one pulling in. You can see a lot of Major League Baseball players hug their left chest when they throw a pitch. You can see that one's pulling back, one's shooting forward. That was kind of one of Melhorn's big premises. This is Bryson, because we can see he releases the heck out of it. I might not have much more. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. You can watch where his right hip works a little bit laterally back. This is Ludwig, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit.
All that. There's another guy that's gone to shit is Patrick Reed.
And we'll talk about this. Is something I never seen this till 1982, so I seen it out of Jimmy Ballard's book actually.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't up sniffing the trophy. You have that?
This is Hogan before his action. You can see his right hip work fractionally laterally on his backswing. Again, shorter left leg after the accident. It was a little different. This is no secret stuff. It's on YouTube. It's where I seen it. I might not have any more. This is Couples. We're going to talk. He does a huge stride drill.
So Couples.
I'm going to talk about that a little later.
Put a charge.
Melhorn said Ben Hogan didn't strangle it in the last three fingers in his left hand. Held it with the thumb and forefingers of both hands. We'll talk about that in a second. That's if somebody has a shut face, which we'll talk about in a second. This is, kids think they invented sex or something. This is feeling the pressure plates in the feet. This is 1991. Where they had this, where the pressure was in the feet during the whole swing. This is just the cover article, but it has it during the whole swing. This is just an optical thing where it's showing, this is just for visual purposes, but the information on the weight distribution in the swing actually came from that original TrackMan I showed you a few minutes ago. And that's all the data where it was. Believe it or not, the shortest hitters on the tour had the most weight on the left foot. At that time, it was Mike Reed and Morris Satowski. The longest hitters had more weight on their right foot at contact. That's what that would show you. Okay. Okay, so I see a lot of injuries. It seems like I'm getting rid of all these kids, and I think it doesn't come from professionals like yourself, but it comes from their high school and college coaches. Compress the ball shaft lean. I mean, I get rid of this every day. And say, how do you know if somebody's doing too much? The biggest indicator is their head drops a foot through the ball. And all their angles are so much like this, they got to go down at it some way to hit it, or obviously left wrist on tape on their left wrist. I'll give huge credit. I don't know who Nick Dunlop's coach is, and if anybody wants to see this, I have it on my phone. When he first won that tournament in Phoenix, I told a lot of my friends, I said, this kid's got no chance. I mean, I got it on my phone. This kid's head dropped this far in a golf swing. And then he's playing good. I go, what's the deal? I'm stooping again, made another dumb call. And then I see him at the Detroit Open, and I have this on my phone. Whoever his pro is weakened his grip a lot. So now his club was like this at impact, so he had to find some way to stay tall. He's obviously a great player. He's doing well. I know he's a great putter. I watched him a couple weeks ago putting. I'm like, that is the worst looking stroke I ever seen. The ball's going in a hole every time. I had a kid like that I was teaching one time, Dave Rummels, the oddest looking stroke in the world. He was top 3 in putting. I don't jack with that. So compress the ball. So I think compress the ball happens, there's 7 different ways. You guys might know 10 different ways it happens naturally. I think it happens, number 1, sequence of swing. If I start my feet, elbows, my feet, hips, shoulders, club last, the club will hang back. I think it comes when the weight gets to the left foot, the arc goes from here to here. It shortens the arc on the downswing. I think it happens naturally because the right arm shouldn't straighten until a little past the ball. It happens naturally when the path of the swing goes, like Sergio does it more than anybody. He actually works on not having that much lag. His arc's so wide back and he gets it so narrow through. This is his practice drill he does a lot at the club. I wish I would have played with him about 40 years ago so I'd have got a better college degree. He's a +8 handicap at Austin Golf Club. He shot 58 3 times. And this guy's not a top 100 player. It's just incredible how good this guy can hit a golf ball. Just super talented. And also a way that I have older and have limitations in my fingers. The other way you can get natural lag in the club is feel your fast point 2 to 3 feet past the ball. Very few, I know there's several books, I think, on learning golf by Percy Boomer's book. He says it. Hogan's book says it, and Al Geiberger's book said it. If you read Hogan's book, he says it's an underhand basketball pass at the target at belt high. Doesn't say anything about impact. So past impact is where he's feeling his fastest speed. I think, in my opinion, lag happens naturally. So here goes, I just want to say these are some thoughts I think that will maybe help enhance your teaching a little bit. And of course, you might all know this already. Whenever I work on somebody's arm swing, I always relate it to their torso. So if I want somebody to have extension of the golf swing, I tell them to keep this distance constant. I don't tell them to get their arms away from their body. If I want their right arm in front of them, I relate it to their torso. It's opposite here. If I want them to keep their triangle, everything's related to the torso, not to outer space. I think that is important. I think golfers that know where the club is the whole swing, they do that naturally. Like I said before, this is the next point I want to say. If somebody can't hook or fade the ball readily with their feet together, they're not ready for any body thoughts. So somebody can say, I can start it right and hook it. I want to educate their hands and arms first. This club I have here is very old. This was actually came from a guy named Floyd Horgan, who I took lessons from and Hal Sutton took lessons from, teaching us how to be aware of the club face. He used to have us hit balls with a club this long off a platform this high. And he'd have us hit it just with our right hand or left hand. And so the platform's like this. You're hitting basically right like this. And it was a pretty effective way to know when to have club face and hand awareness in the swing. I think it's very good. All stuff you know. If you got a guy that slices the ball, you want to give him a hook win or the ball above their feet. This is kind of interesting. I would say the first I heard of this was from Hank Haney. You have somebody that's in this is usually a tough position to help. And there's 2 ways. I'm going to tell you one way now is have the pressure more in the thumb and forefinger of the right hand. Usually this position here at the top is caused by the right arm making a mistake. And having the pressure on the thumb and forefinger stabilizes a little bit. And obviously we'll talk a little bit, the triangle of the arms has something to do with, so that might help a little bit in your teaching. Experiment a little bit with your body parts. I'll have a guy that can't turn back. I said, stay here, swing back as far as you can with your left arm. That's all I got. Swings back with the right. So in my era of teaching, there's only was 2 or 3 instructors that say, feel the right shoulder turn back. Everybody was left shoulder. If somebody says, man, I can't turn my left hip through. I said, nobody can. I can't turn my left hip through. I can turn it back. Your left hip doesn't turn through. Your right hip does. So they'll see this position here and say, geez, he's got his left hip out of the way. That's the right hip and this left shoulder getting out of the way. That's why all the baseball players let go of the bat to keep this guy moving. So you experiment with the different body parts. This guy's going to turn back. This guy's going to turn through. I got Tiger Woods on film on my phone right now, where he's just making practice swings, getting a little older. He's trying to get a little bit more length to his golf swing. Let's see. One of the things I teach, and I've never heard anybody teach this way, and I think Brian could verify this. I've been doing this for probably at least 35 years. I think a good putter never tries to control the face of the club. I think a good putter swings the shaft on the target line. So like if the ball's right here at the corner, I think good putters keep that shaft always at the target line. The blade will open and close automatically. A person that putts like this, I'll tell them, just feel like all your fingers are a pencil and you're just drawing a line to your target there. I don't know too many putters that putt like this good. I'm sure there is. Of old age, Casper and Gary Player putted a little bit that way. I remember Joe Ogilvy was having trouble with his putting, and I had him chip some balls with a 4-iron. I said, just chip them on the green. I don't want you to putt it chipping. Now do the same thing with a putter with a putting setup. And I asked Ben, I said, what do you think of that? I helped him with his putting. Is it pure dumb luck? And Ben says, that's how I always putt. He tries to hit a golf shot. I said, why do you use this 8802? He says, it looks like a golf club to me. We already talked about observing great teachers. You do a little study like with Butch Harmon. And I have these, anything you want that I say here that you'd like to see, I have on my phone. Butch Harmon's dad played like this. He was a real shut-face player. We know Butch has the most success with shut-face players. Koepka or Dustin Johnson, Jimmy Walker, Greg Norman, Tiger of old with shut-face players. I think Butch is maybe the best in our business in instilling confidence. Students that I know that have seen him just say, I feel like I'm getting ready to play the tour. He's very good. I learned a lot from his dad. I didn't know from recently, his dad learned to teach from a guy named Light Horse Harry Cooper, who won 30 tournaments. They both taught at Westchester Country Club. We already showed this a minute ago where we know Freddie Couples, they take the stride drill. I think that's a good drill for automatic timing. That's how you time every sport. You always make a stride. I noticed in this last tournament, Denny McCarthy, which I learned a little bit here, when he did his stride drill, he did it with a closed stance. He didn't drive straight away. So he took a stride drill like this. And I think that's a great timing thing. It's again, goes back to my premise, make it closer to every other hitting and throwing sport. Everything I tell the players, and also if you go under YouTube, Hogan practice swing, Hogan does it. Makes a miniature stride drill if you go under Hogan practice swing under YouTube. Gary Player, we know, did it. Nancy Lopez just said McCarthy did it. I'm always concerned when I tell this, whatever, unless it's a novice player just getting started, it's got to work on the course. I'm thinking, if I thought of all that crap, could I hit a golf shot? So I'm like, I got to think of all that crap, but think of that one simple thing to take care of all those different areas of the swing. I always say that, I use a bad word, the biggest prick I know is me. And I always criticize myself at the end of the day. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I should have been kinder to this person. I should have helped this person. So if you study that student, you can't help. I remember, I think Brian still remembers this. There was a guy named Dwight that came to our school. And he had the club laid off, and he went like this through the ball. He's like, here. I'm like, well, if I correct this, I'm going to mess up this end. So we called it the Dwight drill. To get the club not being laid off as much, we had him swing back with both arms, not just his left arm. And then through the ball, we had him let go of the club with his left arm. The guy starts peering it instead of going. But if you have that person on film, bring it home, take a look at it, say, how can I help that? You'll have that person 6 months from now, 5 months from now, you'll say, I know how to correct that type of swing type. So I do a little self-correction at home from the swings you learn from. In a golf magazine about 3 months ago, it said Scotty Scheffler's, Randy Sitz said, Scotty Scheffler's good because he knows where the club is the whole swing. I think hitting balls with this short little club off would help a lot with this. Also having that relationship is how this club relates to my torso helps that. I remember when I was a decent player, I mean, if I made a mistake back, I'd make a mistake through and somehow hit it straight subconsciously. I was trying to find where I was at address. But I think it's very important to teach your students the club face relationship to the body. And I'm sure Chuck or one of the instructors already talked about some of that. You'll notice if you look at any swings, we know Hogan suffered from a hook. We knew Tiger suffered from hitting it right. If you watch any Hogan swings, he went to avoid the hook, had a real short backswing and a monster turn through because he missed left was his miss. And we know Tiger missed right, so his stinger shot was a big turn back and no turn through. So you can kind of see how the timing matches there. I think Chuck said something very similar to that when I was over there listening to him. A few minutes ago where we've seen where Bryson's hip turn, his right hip worked here, not like this. And you'll see the hip turn really affect the spine angle. So like a lot of times you'll see a person like this and their shoulders will turn too level. You can correct that by getting their hips working a little bit. Joe Ogilvy did this, and he's a lefty playing righty. I got him feeling this a little bit more instead of like this. So a lot of, even on the finish, I mean, this hip goes this way, you're gonna work underneath it, backed up, it'll go this way. So a lot of times these hips are good balance points that affect the spine angle. We already said this a little bit, the triangle position at the top will affect the left wrist. Obviously a guy like Dustin Johnson or Tom Weiskopf or Tom Watson, their arms got closer together, so they got a little shut face. So we're trying to get both arms worked back together, or you could get a guy like Couples that worked his arms back like this. When, I don't know this for a fact, but from talking to Gary Player, Hogan's secret, you read in the magazines to get his left wrist cupped, he did it on his takeaway where he brought the club back like this to correct his position at the top. Gardner Dickinson always said the same thing when I asked him that. So he started back a little bit like this. He got the cup, he took care of business here to take care of business up here. I don't think he could play golf thinking what's happening up here at the top. At least I don't know how you can. Swing plane, how to swing the golf club on plane. Everybody's got their own swing plane. So if you ever want to say, what's your natural swing plane? Have somebody videotape you, line up 6 balls in a row. Have somebody with a tape on there, and you go down the line like this and hit all 6 balls. And that's about where your natural swing plane is. And you're moving and hitting. That's a pretty athletic way to do that. That's just my opinion on that. You can find it that way. Nellie Corda's best drill, and I have this on our film. I love this practice drill for her. This would be, if this was in Jimmy Ballard's book, I think he'd made a little bit more credibility on his swing and demonstration. It also keeps your width a little bit better. I think that right arm connection is pretty good. When you're demonstrating, let's say I have a man that's 85 years old and he flushes a 7-iron 80 yards. I'm going to demonstrate when I help him, I'm going to hit it 80 yards. I'm not going to hit it 160 yards. So try to demonstrate to your level of your student. I got a bunch of books I recommend that you might want to read, might not. It's fine. Tour players, I always ask, like Joe Ogilvy, using him as an example. He always suffered from hooks, so I asked him, what'd you do as a kid, Joe? And he says, well, I couldn't hit balls outside, so my dad had me hit balls in the basement, low ceiling. That's why he swung that way. I asked Fred Funk, what'd you do as a kid, Fred? He said, I never hit balls off turf. I always hit them off a mat, and I swung a broom to get stronger. If you ever want to make Fred Funk mad, he won 8 tournaments on the big tour, 9 on the senior tour. Of the 8 tournaments he won on the big tour, 5 were lift clean in place. He hates it when I say that. So it kind of matched him. Tom Pertzer, we knew he all had a pretty swing. His dad said, whatever you do on this side of the swing, do it on this side. So he tried to match his sides pretty good. And Chuck would be the best to ask on this, but we know Tom Kite is a very technical thinker, so is Podrick Harrington. I was told, and Chuck would know this answer, that one of Tom Kite's best friends is Bob Rotella. So if you're going to be a technical player, study as much as you can, or work on the mental side. I was told Tiger Woods, when he was a little kid, was a cream puff. He wasn't a tough kid. He wins 3 U.S. junior tournaments in a row. He wins 3 U.S. amateurs in a row. We all know that. Did you all know he had a military psychiatrist as his caddy on all those events? A guy that deals with how to go out and freaking kill people in Afghanistan. I mean, the kid got tough, and it's obvious his father was very tough. I believe the mental side is really important. For me, it's very simple. You have a pre-shot routine to satisfy your conscious mind. Hit this with real quiet. I think the great players in the book, The 15th Club by Rotella, he talks about Podrick Harrington. I remember one summer I had 4 real good rounds of golf at Cherry Hills, Decatur Country Club of the Rockies, and Greenleaf. And I tell everybody, I got those rounds. I played great because of swimming. I counted my laps at night, birdieing holes of golf. And I was totally out of competitive golf. I knew I wasn't any good. But those 4 rounds, I played great by, you're just programming. I use the example, do you know who Patty Hearst is, anybody? She was a billionaire. She was involved in this cult, and this cult had her robbing banks with a machine gun. Those of you that are old as me would know that. I mean, you can program these great players. Like you read 15th Club, Podrick's doing bench press. He's visualizing hitting a perfect drive at Augusta, a perfect second shot, making a putt at a crucial time. I think these guys and girls are so programmed to great golf, it's unbelievable.
Okay.
Just think how I want to make two last points on toughness. Ben Hogan's playing he's playing the 16th hole at Carnoustie. He hits a shot. Those of you that might do a little research, and there's right next to him is a reporter, one reporter. He said, "How did Tony Serta finish?" And they tell Hogan, he says, "You got a 2-shot lead." He says, "You could put my name on the trophy." Could you imagine doing that at Carnoustie with 3 holes to play and know you had that much confidence? Can you imagine being Jack Nicklaus at 20 years old, putting $200 on himself to win the U.S. Open as an amateur, playing the last 2 rounds with Ben Hogan and beating him? Of course, Hogan hit in the water on the last 2 holes, but prior to that, and they asked Hogan, "What do you think about this kid? Why didn't you win, Ben? You hit in the water on 17, and he goes, "I play with a kid. If he had a half a brain, he'd have won by 3 shots. So the confidence these people have are unbelievable. I want to thank all these Scott and Trey and the audiovisual people for putting this on. One of the things I wish they would do, I think we have so many talented people right here. I would like to see all of you up here, not bring out-of-town people to do our talks if it's on being a golf. I'd love to hear what Brent Buckman says about being a golf professional. He's taught 15, 20 of the top professionals in the country. Jimmy Terry, he's probably had 15 of the best jobs in the world in the last 30 years. How do you do that, Jimmy? I want to hear that. I mean, to me, that's just incredible. I seen Steve Tremere's career. I'd want to hear about him. I want to hear how he moved up and down. One last thing, sorry. Scott, I want to mention one last thing on compress the ball lag. If you do and Steve Tremere would be the best example. I don't know if any of you know this. He was the best junior in the United States, and he goes to Oklahoma State. And whatever the coach did there, he lost his game some way, came back and finished up at UT. And I did a little research. The top players at Oklahoma State and the top players at Brigham Young, primarily taught by that system golfing machine, none of them last past their 30th birthday. I want to think of a whole swing, not impact. All of you are going to make sure the student is correct at impact, but I think that happens prior to that. Thank you all for attending. Thanks, Scott.
Everybody living.
Much just. Well, if that club was short, it probably was in my mind.
No, yes, it's sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Making that.
I was looking at my time there, I ran out of time. So I tried.